I'd show these again now that I've cut some parts for them. The idea is these are optional, so if I want to use this as a isolator, I just remove these. I can connect wire here and it isolates it. I can also bridge the wire by adding these, and I just sandwich the wire between them, and then that creates a connection between the two for those. So for instance, with my end-fed half wave, what I would essentially do is have something like this set up. This one would go somewhere else. My antenna starts here. I have a jumper that goes to the antenna port on the little box that I've got here, and this bridges the gap between the two. Antenna continues, and you have another one here if you want to link the end-fed half wave. So essentially I could have a 40 meter end-fed to here, 80 meter from here out, and I could either have these, and I just went to work and cut a bunch of them. So those are aluminum. Excuse me, these are stainless, just out of some scrap that we had laying around, which is kind of handy to be able to do that. And so what I've done is I've just got these added to each one that I've 3D printed already. So they're there. And I think what I'm going to do, because one issue that I've had is when you put these wing nuts together, I did 3D print this that way, and that was for the 14 gauge speaker wire in particular. It's half the diameter of the speaker wire, and the idea was if I wanted to not connect the speaker wire at the very end, but I want to, originally the idea was I want to be able to have the speaker wire go through this and kind of meander through there, and it kind of adds to the clamp. It's not just a straight through that might be pulled out a little easier. It would have to work a little harder because it has that little diagonal in it. And the idea was I could, say my tree or whatever is over here with some paracord hooked to this, and I've got 30 feet of paracord going to a tree or whatever it is. I can have 20 inches or so of cord sticking out with a little, band or something to hold it here, and I can trim to length my wire using this because it actually clamps up further on the wire. I might take this out and make it just flat, and I could 3D print it like this. And if I did that, I might alternate these. So instead of this might just end up being a hole, and that would be a stud going through it, and then this would have a stud going through it, and essentially you'd have one wing nut on this end and one wing nut over here if you did it that way. Reason being, if I did it that way, I did put these close together because I kind of wanted them to be small. I didn't want to make a very big isolator, but if you notice, when you put the wing nut here and here, it's so hard to do with one hand. Okay, the wings can hit each other. It's not really been a big deal, but that's, I guess I could make them a little bit longer, but I've already 3D printed a bunch, so I'm just going to use what I've got. And I've already made a bunch of these out of the scrap that I had, so I'll probably end up 3D printing some more of these things and use some of this up as well. So I made some stainless ones and I made some aluminum ones. I wanted some thinner material, so again, it's just what I had laying around at work. So also, the ft-991a. So I've been playing with this radio a little bit, and I've done some stuff with the 991 the 891 that was here. It's now in my car, and the G90. So, you know, again, I'm still going to say it's a fabulous little rig here. I love this thing. But one of the things that I kind of wanted was an all-in-one. That's the reason I bought the ft-991a. Now, if you look, if I go here, I have all these functions. So I've got, what's that? DNR, digital noise reduction, all these different things that I can do. Now, I want to show you, if I go to, let's see, where's it at? Still trying to figure this out. So I've programmed in some channels. I've got some simplex channels, and you use your thing here to scroll through them. So I've got some different things programmed in. So there's a repeater near me. There's another repeater. Now, I'm in 2 meter mode. And if you notice, half of the options, I have no digital noise reduction. I don't have a lot of different things that I can do. Maybe if I go to sideband, oh, not. So if I go to single sideband, I don't know which one I would do for this, but if I go here now, okay, so apparently if you are in FM, you lose a lot of these options. I've not done any kind of single sideband stuff on 2 meter at all. I don't know much about it, but one of the things that I am seeing is the 2 meter portion of this is, to me, it's like an additional thing. It's kind of neat. It's neat to have it in the same box, but I've heard a lot of people say buy an FT710 or a 7300 and, you know, basically skip this rig. Don't get something that's a shack in the box, basically. And to be honest, I'm kind of leaning that direction. I am going to keep this. I'm not going to sell it. This would be a good to me. I'm going to put it in my camper eventually. But all this has done is makes me want a FT710. So that is a plan to purchase in the future as a base station. The idea was this would be my base station for a little while, and eventually I would upgrade to an FT710 as my base station at the house. This would go into the camper. This would be my portable radio, and I've got one of those FTs, something CR, if whatever it is. It's a small, it's like the size of that, that does 20 watts. So I've got a case here, a small case. I've got a bigger one that I've got one of these in. But when I bought this radio, it came with this case from Radioddity. And I think I'm going to repurpose this case for that little small one. So it'll be a really small case. I've got a small tuner that'll go in here. And I'm going to use some of those little DeWalt tool battery things that I've got to run that. But again, if you're looking, you know, if you've got one of these, or you're trying to decide, do I want to buy an ft-991a or an FT710, I'm going to say it right now after just dropping $1,200 on this radio. It's worth it. I think, you know, it's a good radio. I do think it's a little dated. It's got some age on it. Now, I've not messed with an FT710, but everything I have seen is just nothing but good things about those radios. And I'm still sort of torn between a 710 and a 7300, but it really looks like the 710 is kind of the clear winner there. I don't know if the 7300 has a tuner. I know the FT710 does not. So that might be an issue. I don't know, but I can always add a tuner to it. But from what I understand, it's got a really good receive. This isn't quite as good. But this is going to end up going into my camper. This will be a camper sort of all-in-one shack in the box that's really quick, really easy to kind of shove out of the way with one radio. I did have this radio in my camper with a little bracket that held another 2-meter radio above it, and that's what I was running in my camper. And really, man, I got tons of contacts out of that thing. I was able to get all over the place with a little 20-watt radio and a dipole, but I'm shifting kind of over to the end-fed half waves just because in a camper specifically, that's just an easier thing to get deployed. But I'm going to say after playing with this in high frequency, it does pretty good. From what I understand, the FT710 is a better high frequency rig, and this was what, $200 more than the FT710. I could have bought the 710 and had a better HF rig and not had the 2-meter. And after playing with 2-meter on this and messing with it and doing different things, really, I probably should have spent the money on the 710 instead of this one, and saved the $200 and put it towards a standalone 2-meter rig. Again, not going to get rid of it. I'm going to keep it. I'm blessed with the ability to buy stuff like this. I'm, I'm single. I can kind of spend my money how I want to. So that's what I've been doing. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy a 710. And when I get my office that's going to end up being in my Helm Shack finished up, then it's going to end up with the 710 in it. And this is going to my camper. And this one is probably going to go into my truck. I'm going to separate the head and figure out a way to mount this in my truck somehow and run it with, I've got some of these brackets for the ham stick. I'm going to probably put some ham sticks in different places on my truck, and that's probably going to run my truck. And then I've got another one of these in my little MCOM case that's in my car right now that also has the ft-891. So I have done videos in the past comparing this G90 to the ft-891, and maybe a little unfair to the ft-891. Maybe I should have had a little more grace with it. As I've used it, I do like it. I'm glad I bought it, and for a mobile installation, I really like it. It's just a really nice radio for a mobile install. The fact that you can pull the head off. This one you can take the head off, and it came with the cable to separate it. It came with like a 6 or 8 foot cable. The ft-891, I spent like $700 by the time I got it to the house, and then you add a $60, I think it was $60 for the separation kit, but it came with really long cables. I was able to put the base in the back of my car and run the cables to the front, and that also allowed me to run a shorter run of antenna coax to the ft-891 from the ATAS 120A antenna that I installed. So that was kind of neat. But for the money and the 20 watts that this one has, I've run 20 meter on a ham stick on this exact radio, and I've gotten all over the place, and really, from what I could tell, it did better than the antenna that I bought for my for the 891 that's on my car. Now, maybe that was just that day, I don't know, but this one, again, for a 20 watt radio, man, this thing is fabulous. And what I've seen is the 20 watts out of this radio, when I've put these together and I've transmitted 20 watts here, same frequency here as here, usually on 40 meter. I tend to stay on 40 meter most of the time. But 40 meter, I can transmit with this radio and talk to somebody, and it's fine. I can then take this radio, swap out my antenna over to this. When I transmit on this radio, most people can still hear me just fine. I can still get out there pretty good with 20 watts versus 100 watts out of this one. So, you know, again, if you want to get started and play with some stuff, these radios are fantastic. I do have the 125B amplifier that you can get from Radioddity as well. I wish I would have spent that money on one more of these instead of the amplifier. I wish I'd have bought another G90. Honestly, I've never used it. I've never even plugged it in. Just using this versus this, I've not seen a reason to add the extra wattage. I've talked to people, and what I've found is, you take a guy that's got 600 watts behind him on an amplifier. I can hear him, and I can hear him good, and he's loud. But if he drops down to 20 watts, or in my case, my 20 watts, I'm able to get back to him, and he can hear me just fine on my 20 watts. So, you know, it's just one of those things. But again, good radio. This is going to work out great in my camper. It does have a built-in tuner. It does have 2 meter built in, and it has separate ports. And right now I'm literally just running a little one of those. And what's interesting is, watch this. See those little lights on that thing? That's not even plugged in. I can turn the lights on and off wirelessly. Look at that. But anyway, and the weird part is that only works on, let's see, where's it at? So if I'm on 2 meter, now if I go to that one, that's a 70 centimeter. It don't work. So if I'm transmitting, I'm just blipping it. But it doesn't work on 70 centimeter for whatever reason. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, just a little more feedback with the 991 after I've had it and played with it for several days now. I do like it. I was, after seeing the waterfall on this little radio, and then looking at this one, was a little bit disappointed in the waterfall and how this one works compared to a much cheaper rig. I love the waterfall on this thing. It's great. I don't see any room for improvement there. But now, again, on 40 meter, very clear, works very well. I've been able to pull in every station on this one that I've been able to hear on this one. The biggest difference is this button right here, that little oh, well, it don't work on 2 meter or 70 centimeter, or FM. I guess it would work if I was on single sideband, but that digital noise reduction on 40 meter is awesome. And I would, again, on that ft-991, it's awesome. I love having that option. Give us a, come on, Zygu. You should be able to put some kind of digital noise reduction in this, in the firmware somehow, some way. I have Googled looking for custom firmware, looking for any other option. I even bought this thing off of Amazon. It was like 80 bucks, and I tried running the audio out of this into this. And if anybody is tempted to buy one of these, do not buy it. It's not worth the money. It's 80 bucks that I just blew. So I figured, you know what, it's worth a shot. I'm going to give it a try. If for $80 I can add some way of noise reduction on this unit, it was worth the gamble, and it just didn't pay off. So, you know, just something to think about. That's the only downside to this receiver, but nowhere near a downside to me. As far as this is still a fantastic little receiver or transceiver, radio, rig, whatever you want to call it. I'm still, if I'm talking to anyone that is interested in high frequency, has limited funds, but wants a good radio, again, the G90 is an absolute beast of a little machine. This is a good one. And it gives you a shack in the box, and it gives you a lot of options that you can do, and it gives you noise reduction, but it's $1,200. I don't know if I could say that I would recommend somebody spend $1,200 on this machine or this rig or whatever. For me, it's worth $1,200 for me to put it in my camper. If I had just gotten a technician license and wanted to be able to move up, maybe this would be a good rig to get started with, because it gives you a lot of options and you're still able to get into high frequency and you can listen and do a bunch of other things. But I'm not sure, I've got some cheaper 2-meter radios that I paired up with this. The radio was, I think it was 25 watts. This is 50. But it was a 25 watt 2-meter radio that I had on this. I paid $75 for it brand new. I was able to program it with Chirp, which is pretty nice because it's free software. I was able to program it really quickly, where this one I've got to pay $20 or $50 for RT systems if I want to program it with that. But I've just elected to program it through the system here. But what I like about some of the other radios that are a little bit cheaper is I can buy those. They don't have System Fusion. They don't have other things. But honestly, so far, I've messed with System Fusion just a little bit. And I could see where somebody would like that. But it's really not for me. To me, the whole point of this endeavor, really the biggest thing that started me in this hobby, is I want a way to talk to people that has zero infrastructure, that doesn't rely on the internet, that doesn't rely on repeaters, that doesn't rely on anything. Now, that's a repeater that I talk on a lot, and it's nice, and it's still probably more robust than your cell phone network out there. But in most cases, in a bad enough scenario, that repeater's not there. So, again, for the money, I could have this radio with a tuner that is absolutely awesome. It'll tune a dead goat. And a cheap little 2-meter radio, a little bracket that I fabricated, and I can get out. I've had really good success with this, with a very simple, cheap, literally wire antenna that I put up outside in an hour, with a piece of PVC pipe and some copper strips, and no baling, no transformer, no nothing, and electrical tape and some 10-gauge wire that I had on a spool that I didn't even know I had. So for what I invested into that antenna, was able to get out and get really good signals out. Everybody I talked to with that dipole was more than impressed with what I was able to do on a little 20-watt rig. So no infrastructure. This one with Fusion, I don't, maybe I don't understand it yet, and I've still got a ways to go to play with it, and I'm still going to delve into that. But really, to me, maybe I'm more of an analog guy. I enjoy the idea of being able to hit a button and get to somebody on the other end, and there's nothing that stops us between. There's no internet that's going down. There's no server that's going to go down. There's none of that. It's just waves going through the air on a wire dipole. So again, good rig. If I had it to do over again, I would probably just go straight for the FT710. I'm not going to sell this and go buy an FT710. I have a place for it. So with me, I'm a little bit manic. I have, when I get started in anything, I start formulating a plan immediately. So I've already sort of assigned everything here to a place. So when I bought this, I was thinking, okay, I can spend the money on an FT710, or I can spend the money on this. Now, I eventually want a radio that just stays in my camper, that I can use and just basically hook to and go, and boom, everything's there. If I'm doing that, I'm probably not going to have the best antenna set up. Maybe wherever I end up at, am I going to have a tree that I can get an end-fed half wave to, or can I build a dipole that, you know, I'm working on building as much into the camper as I possibly can, so I have as many options as I can. But again, I can't dictate where I'm going to end up. Maybe I end up in the middle of a parking lot somewhere, and, you know, I've got a light pole 60 feet away. I don't know. So I've got a tuner, get something out that's tunable. This one works. Here at my house, I can build whatever the heck I want to. So an FT710, resonant antenna, tuner, whatever I need to add to it. So that's kind of the picture that I've got. This is going to be in my truck. This is going to be in my camper. I'm going to replace this in my ham shack in the house with an FT710 specifically for high frequency. And then I'll eventually, I've got an Anytone 2-meter radio. It'll do, is it DMR? D-Star, something. I'll probably end up with one of those in here as a 2-meter rig to complement the 710, so I'll have both of those options available. And honestly, even in my camper, for $75, I may also add another 2-meter setup. So if I am on high frequency on this, I can also have a 2-meter setup on the other end where I can, you know, use both at the same time if I want to. But again, worth the money. Nice setup, nice radio. I do like the size. That's one thing I really like about this radio. For everything you get, it is a much smaller size than, say, the FT710 or my ICOM that I bought, the first high frequency rig I bought. This is a very small rig, and again, fits the camper well. Very small rig, put it on the table, don't take up a lot of room, but does a lot for the small package. So it's not as small as this, but this also gives me 100 watts. So if my antenna is a little bit compromised, maybe I get a little bit more out. If my coax isn't perfect, this gets a little more out there. So, you know, again, 50 watts on 2 meters. Maybe that gets me places that a 25 watt radio won't get me on 2 meters. So, you know, gives me just a little bit more functionality. So maybe I've got a 25 watt radio that I can talk to people on. Maybe I'm having trouble getting to them. Maybe I'm having trouble with whatever. I could then switch over to 50 watts with this rig and maybe get a little bit more out. So that gives me a little bit more options. And one of the things that I keep seeing to be true is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So, you know, even in the camper, adding a little 25 watt or 20 watt 2 meter radio gives me an additional option of that. And if I'm going somewhere in that camper, I'm going to be pulling it with a truck that's got one of these in it, or the ft-991, or I'm going to be pulling it and I'll have that MCOM case with another G90 sitting in it. So I'm going to have multiple options with me either way. Part of the reason I really got started in this hobby was the floods in western North Carolina. Got out there, saw the devastation and the absolute the fact that lives were lost because there was no communication. We went out there and tried to help, and people could have used our help. And it was one of those things where it was really, you had disaster relief organizations that had no communication. They had a, the Elon Musk thing. They had one of those set up. And around the church that they were in, we could get on the internet. But then that was all they had. So it was like, you know, if anything like this ever happens again, and this is really where the core of what got me started. If this ever happens again, I'm going to roll up. I'm going to pull a camper with me, and I've got a little 13-foot tiny camper. And it's going to be a communication center that if nobody else wants to use it, I've got access to it. So if I'm out there and something like that happens and I show up in that, I've got a way to get to the outside world. I've got multiple of the little Bofang radios that I can pass out with a really, the camper. I'll have a really nice 2-meter antenna that I can deploy and get 35, 40 feet in the air. I'm going to have NVIS set up for high frequency, and I'm going to be able to get back home to my home base with my kids, and I can relay information through them. And I'll have 2-meter that I can pass out to people in an emergency and say, we've got a way to get something going. So that was just something that at that point, when I saw the need for that was just not there, that nobody had even thought to have something like that set up. It was just, I'm not going to be in that position again. So, now once I got started, then it was an addiction. Then it's buying, $5,000 worth of radios in 2 months and everything else that I've done. And then it was antenna theory and building transformers and building the Balins and all that stuff. And I have absolutely enjoyed the heck out of it. But it all stemmed from that place. It all came from, I won't be in this position again. I won't be in a place where I can't help someone because I can't talk to them, or somebody else, or coordinate because there's no way to coordinate if you can't communicate. The only coordination that was there was face to face. That was it. And literally the guy that was in charge of the place that we went to, kept telling us, well, give me your cell phone number. And it was like, how is that going to help? You put us in a church that's 5 miles away, and the only place that you can get any kind of service is right here in front of the building you're in. What good is that going to do? And it just didn't seem to click. So it was like, surely, you could have went to Walmart and bought blister packs of FRS radios or something and done something, and in this case, again, an NVIS setup with a radio like this, or 2 of these, one at each church, where you've got a comms guy that's just going, okay, we're going to talk to each other with over 40 meter. We're going to figure something out. The small amount of investment, the small amount of time, and surely you can find one helm guy in your church that will set that up or something. That's what got me started in this. It was like, if I ever end up in that situation again, so I got back home after that, and I went from that point. I ended up buying 2 motorcycles, a 4-wheeler, now granted, none of that was brand new. The motorcycle was literally an Amazon motorcycle that I just fell into the deal. I traded something I didn't want for it. None of this really was like I spent tens of thousands of dollars. I got the motorcycle in trade. I got the 4-wheeler in trade. Somebody gave me the 4-wheeler, and it wouldn't hardly run, and I ended up working on it and bought a top-end kit and put on it and a bunch of other stuff. But I ended up with a 4-wheeler, and so my plan is if something like that ever happens again, one of the things I do want to do is get into Aries, get into some of the other things. I'm going to try to get CPR certified, some things like that, as time permits. But, in that situation, a friend of mine and I, as capable as the 2 of us are, we could have gotten out there with some type of communication. And my intent, one of the reasons I went to ham radio was APRS, was I want to be able to go, hey, here's a radio. I can track you based on this radio. I can use this with a TNC and hook it up to a laptop and somehow get back and forth to you on APRS and track where you're at on GPS coordinates or whatever on a map. And when you get there and on your motorcycle and you say, hey, there's a whole neighborhood over here underwater, or there's this, or there's that, or here's people up here that need help, or we need to build a bridge to this place so we can get help in here. I can put that down, and at some point I can get that information to people that can actually do something with it. If nothing else, that we have a way to get out and help people, because it literally, I believe that people died because there was no way to communicate. So This is going to be something that maybe I'll never use that in that facet, but I want that to be something I can do. So again, for what I'm doing, good radio, works well. But I wanted to kind of, I guess, give a reality check maybe on what this actually is. If you're looking at this and you want a good HF radio, it is good. The 2 meter part of it to me is kind of, it's a neat little add-on. It's no better to me than the $75 2 meter radio that I've got. It doesn't add any functionality. I don't have, so I was able to use this on, there's a, hang on, here we go. It's not this one. It's this. I programmed in this. It's Tower of Power on something. It's pretty far away, and I was able to use this radio to actually get to that repeater. But very, very, very faint signal. I could barely get to it. I've got a Slim Jim antenna strung up in a tree out there, and that's how I was able to get to it. Very staticky, kind of hard to hear, and I was like, oh, I get to go in here and use my noise reduction. No, I don't. I can't do that. So, I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting when I found that out. So know what you're buying. If this is what you're after, if you just absolutely want 2 meter, and you know, so you're getting, to me with this radio, you're getting a small form factor, you're getting 2 meter and a tuner. Other than that, if that's what you're looking for, and that's a big deal, buy the radio. If you want a good high frequency radio, I would say go with the FT710, and I have yet to buy one yet. So that's my next planned purchase. I will buy one of those. That'll be my next radio that I buy. But I don't know. I'm a little bit underwhelmed by the 2 meter portion of this radio. Just, you know, maybe again, just like I said with the FT891, I'm not throwing it away. I'm not saying it's a piece of garbage. I'm not saying I hate it, but I'm saying a little underwhelmed. And even the FT891, for the money, if I had to buy one radio, that's what I'd buy. If I was on a budget, buy that radio. Even the FT891, I like the FT891 as an additional radio to what I've got. But the experience on high frequency, on 40 meters with this radio, is better to me than the FT891. The FT891, again, it feels dated. It feels like, you know, and I wish I had it in here, but it took a lot to get that thing installed. So, but the, what do you call this? The waterfall, the spectrum, whatever analyzer thing that it's got on it versus this, man, I can see a signal on this radio. I don't have it plugged into an antenna right now, but I can see on this waterfall, oh, there's a guy talking right here. Zzz, and I'm over there. I can instantly do it. On the 891, I am taking this dial and I'm listening and I hear whoop, and it's, oh, is there somebody there? And then I kind of hunt around and it's like, well, no, that was something else, or that was whatever. It was so faint I couldn't. But on this one, I can immediately see there's a strong signal over here, there's a strong signal over here, there's a weak signal over here, and I can just go right to it and immediately get there. Easy to get there. The only downside, again, and I don't even consider the 20 watts a downside on this radio. There again, yeah, it's 20 watts, it's not 100, but I'm also pulling 3.9 amps, or 3.8, or it's 3 point something, just under 4 amps at full 20 watt transmit on this radio. I can take my FT891, turn it down to 20 watts, and I'm still pulling 7 or 8 amps. I'm still pulling double the amperage that this radio pulls. And if I want to spend the extra money, I can buy an amp. And I've actually found other amps that you can buy other than the one from Radiodity that's $500. To me, I don't understand why they don't make a simpler amp that don't have a tuner that would just give me 100 amps out of this thing. And I think they do. And I've seen some that are, $150, $200 that give you roughly 100 amps that are a little bit more rudimentary than the other one. So you've got the option of, for the money of an FT891, you could still buy this radio, have an additional amplifier on the backside, and still have a really good QRP radio. And in an emergency situation, again, this radio is going to draw very little power. It's not going to pull much. And in all reality, my camper setup with this radio, as long as I've got a generator running or something like that, great. As long as I've got a good battery pack and solar's working great, fantastic. I can use this radio. But as soon as it's a little cloudy, I ran out of gas in my generator or whatever, guess what's getting plugged in? I'm going to plug this radio in, and I'm going to run this radio, because this one's not going to drain the batteries dead in no time. I can hook this up to a 4 amp hour, 12 volt lithium battery that I've got for a drill, and I've run it for 2 hours, and still didn't run the battery dead, and was able to transmit and communicate for 2 solid hours, and it still kept running. So, even though this is going to be in my camper, this is going to be the backup to it. So again, just my opinion, for my uses, might not be yours, but I just wanted to kind of give a better understanding of what these two radios are, what they do, understand the caveats of, or the little glitches with each one. And I'm not sponsored by these guys or anything like that. I just like the radio. I bought everything with my own money. These little G90s, I can't say enough good things about them. Anybody to me, I don't care if you've already got one of these, go buy one of these. That's a fantastic radio. Again, if Zygu ever listens, put an DNR in this, put digital noise reduction in your firmware update at some point, and charge more money if you have to. But I love these radios. Just great, fantastic little radio. So, I meant for this to be a comparison of the two to some degree, but, again, like the radio, worth the money, keeping the radio, not selling the radio, putting it in a certain place. Its backup will be one of these. So that's what you're getting into. So have a great day. I hope that made sense and all my rambling, but that's kind of where I'm at. You guys have a great day. Bye.